We're being joined by Mr. Frederick Fleets, who's the Vice Chairman at the America First Policy Institute, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Now, Mr. Fleets, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us here on WION. Now, this is a question that a lot of people around the world are, of course, going to be asking. The fact that the United States of America is at the forefront of providing weapons to Ukraine in its defense is well known. But this question that has been raised by the Russians is a pretty pertinent one. Does the United States know where the Ukrainians are using these weapons?
It's a pleasure to be here. Well, I think it's a bit rich that the Russians are complaining that the Ukrainians could be using their weapons to attack inside Russia when Russia is attacking inside Ukraine. Now, the U.S. has asked the Ukrainians not to do that, and I would prefer that Ukraine not escalate the war. But I think this is inevitable as this war pushes on, as Russia continues to commit these the vicious humanitarian violations and destroying the country of Ukraine. War is ugly, and I think we're going to see things like that happen.
Absolutely. Now, ever since the invasion began and the West decided to, of course, arm Ukraine for its defense, what was made clear is that these weapons that were being supplied to Ukraine were being given for its defense, and that the West was not interested in escalating the war. But looking at what's been happening in the course of the last few weeks, where attacks have been carried out deep inside the borders of Russia, do you fear that the fact that these Western weapons being used by the Ukrainians to carry out these attacks could result in a greater escalation?
I am concerned about an escalation, and we did tell the Ukrainians they're not supposed to do that, but I think this was inevitable, and it worries me that we're moving in that direction, and there's no talk by the Ukrainian government or the Biden administration on a ceasefire or a settlement. There should be a serious effort to stop this war, which I think is going to become a long-term quagmire, a stalemate that I think ultimately Ukraine will lose. That's what we should be talking about, how to end the war.
Absolutely, indeed. I'm pretty sure that we will get to the point where the leaders of the world, the people who are pulling the strings as to what is happening in the battlefields of Ukraine, will put their heads together and talk about how to end this war. But looking at what is happening unfold on the ground there, now the West has also promised to provide F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Do you believe that Ukraine would not use the F-16 fighter jets to carry out offensive attacks inside the Russian territory? And if they do, that could, of course, result in a much bigger escalation.
I haven't seen any report that that's going to happen. And these F-16s won't be arriving for months. The Ukrainian pilots have to be trained on them. There's no prospect of that happening in the near term.
All right, but it's difficult to predict as to what's been happening on the battleground. But thank you very much indeed, Mr. Fleets, for joining us and getting us all those insights there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.